"You're just a guest here now, Mom. This is my house." Those were the words my son said to me while I stood barefoot in the hallway of the very home I had helped build from the ground up. The same hallway where I once taped his kindergarten drawings to the wall, where I had danced with his father during quiet Saturday evenings, where every memory of my adult life was rooted. Now, I was just a guest. I'm Margaret. I turned 65 this year. I didn't think I'd be starting over at this age. I didn't think I'd be sleeping in my car behind a grocery store parking lot, with nothing but a suitcase full of clothes and a worn photo of my late husband, Daniel. But this story didn't start there. It started the day I handed over my trust, my future, to the one person I thought would protect it, my only son, Evan. After Daniel passed, I was numb for months. We had been together since high school. We were partners in everything emotionally, financially, spiritually. When cancer took him, I felt like someone had turned the volume down on the world. The house was quiet, but not in a peaceful way. It was hollow. Evan was the only reason I got out of bed. He had just married a bright, stylish woman named Kelsey. She was younger than him by a few years and had big ideas about their future. I wanted to be happy for them. I wanted to be supportive. But there was always something cold in the way she smiled. Polite but distant. Too perfect, almost rehearsed. Still, I told myself I was lucky. My son lived close by. They visited every Sunday. We had dinner. Laugh. Kelsey complimented the wine. Evan helped me with the garden. But things started changing subtly at first. Kelsey would rearrange things in the kitchen without asking. Evan began suggesting I declutter the house, our house, so it would feel more modern. I shrugged it off. Newlyweds just wanted a fresh space. Then, one afternoon, Evan asked if I had ever thought about putting the house in his name. "It'll just be for legal protection, Mom. You know, in case anything happens. You're not getting younger, and it's smart to avoid probate." I laughed and rolled my eyes. "Evan, don't talk like I'm halfway to the grave." But he was insistent. And I trusted him. He was my son. He had never betrayed me before. The lawyer they recommended made it all sound routine. "You'll still live here, of course. Nothing really changes. It's just a transfer of title helps your estate stay clean." So I signed. And that was the day I unknowingly signed away my rights, my home, and my dignity. Over the following weeks, Kelsey became bolder. She started hosting her yoga clients in the living room. She labeled food in the fridge. Kelsey's almonds, Evan's protein shakes. She suggested I move my bedroom to the guest room because she wanted to turn the master into a home office. Evan barely looked at me when I protested. "It's just more practical, Mom," he said. "You're not working anymore. It's not like you need all that space." I felt a sting I couldn't explain. The words weren't cruel, not exactly. But they stripped me of something invisible, my place. I had gone from owner to occupant, from mother to inconvenience. And yet I stayed quiet. I didn't want to rock the boat. I thought maybe I was imagining it. Until the night I overheard them arguing in the kitchen. "I don't want her here when we have kids," Kelsey whispered harshly. "She's always watching, always listening. This is our house, Evan, not hers." "But she's my mom," he said, sounding unsure. "I mean, she has nowhere else to go." Kelsey replied coldly. "Then she better figure it out. Because I'm not raising a child with a roommate." I sat on the stairs, numb, each word landing like a hammer. They didn't know I was there. And I didn't know what to do. Because how do you fight for something you already gave away? How do you remind your own child that you're not a burden, you're the reason they have anything at all? The walls of that house knew me. The garden was planted by my hands. The mortgage had been paid with my sweat and Daniel's long hours. And now, I was a guest. But I wasn't ready to disappear. I wasn't ready to be erased. Not yet. Honestly, Evan, it's weird she's still here. She just lingers. Like one of those guests who don't know when to leave. That's what Kelsey said, not even a whisper this time. She said it loud enough that I heard it from the hallway, while I was folding laundry that wasn't even mine. I stood there, holding Evan's favorite blue sweatshirt, the one I bought him his first year of college. My hands trembled. I felt the seams slipping between my fingers, like the pieces of my identity unraveling quietly in the silence of a house I no longer recognized. They had guests over that evening, Kelsey's friends from her yoga class. Young, glamorous, loud. They toasted their protein smoothies and planned a couple's getaway. I stayed upstairs like a ghost in the attic. I didn't want to embarrass Evan, but Kelsey found a way to make me visible. Without kindness. "I'm serious," she continued. "We need that room. She's taking up space emotionally, physically, spiritually. I feel blocked." Laughter. Clinking glasses. Someone whispered something crude about boomer energy. And then, "She's lucky we haven't started charging rent." Felt like someone had dropped ice water down my spine. Rent. In the house I bought with Daniel. The house where I labored through morning sickness, mopped up fevers, taught Evan to ride a bike on the driveway, and wept for hours after his father died. I went to bed without eating that night. The walls felt thinner than usual. My body lighter somehow, as if I were fading. Evan didn't come up to say goodnight. The next morning I left early. Just walked. I don't know how far. I found a bench by the park and sat for hours watching the ducks. Everything in my body was tight, my chest, my hands, my jaw. I wanted to believe Evan didn't mean for this to happen. That he didn't hear the poison in Kelsey's voice. That he was just distracted. But something had shifted in him. In both of them. They spoke about the house like it was theirs exclusively. They held private conversations in public spaces. Their smiles tightened when I entered a room. The warmth was gone. The tipping point came 2 weeks later. It was a Sunday, the day we always had dinner together. I made Evan's favorite roast chicken the way Daniel used to. I even set the table with the old blue china we saved for holidays. But 6 p.m. came and went. No car in the driveway. No text. No Evan. At 7:30 I called. "Hey Mom," he said, distracted. "Oh, yeah, Kelsey and I decided to eat out tonight. She's got this new vegan thing she's trying," and I sat there staring at the perfectly cooked chicken. It was already cold. "You could have told me," I said, voice cracking. "I cooked for you." He paused. "I didn't think it was a big deal. We've been eating together less anyway, right?" That's when I knew. It wasn't accidental. It was a slow erasure. A quiet exit they were forcing me into. They didn't want to ask me to leave. That would make them the villains. Instead, they were making it so unbearable I'd leave on my own. I held on for a few more weeks, trying to reclaim my place. But everything changed when the mail stopped coming in my name. One afternoon I opened the mailbox and found nothing. No bills. No statements. Not even a catalog. First I thought it was a mistake. Then I overheard Kelsey telling Evan, "I had the address changed. She doesn't need mail cluttering up our space. She can get a P.O. box." I confronted Evan that night. "You changed the address on my mail." He sighed like I was inconveniencing him. Kelsey thought it was just more efficient. More efficient than what? Than letting me live like a person in my own home. He frowned. "Mom, don't be dramatic. You're still here, right? It's not like anything's changed." But everything had. The mail was just a symptom. The disease ran deeper into the deed. I remembered the paperwork, vaguely. I hadn't thought about it in months. Title transfer. The trust. All the assurances they gave me about nothing really changing. So I went into the garage, rummaged through the old filing cabinet, and found it. The documents. I sat down and read every word. And then my heart stopped. It wasn't a shared ownership. It wasn't a protective trust. It was a full transfer. They had taken my name off the deed. I didn't own my home anymore. I was legally a tenant, and not even a protected one. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying every moment, every smile, every meal, every time I held back my discomfort to make them comfortable. Gave them my house. And they gave me exile. The next morning I tried to talk to Evan again. I showed him the document. You said it was just for legal protection. You said it didn't change anything. He looked away. It was easier this way. Kelsey and I needed leverage for refinancing. You're not working. We couldn't risk you losing the house to medical debt or something. It's just business, Mom. Business. I nearly shouted. I'm your mother. This was my home. I gave this to you in good faith. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't argue. He just said, well, you're still here. What more do you want? I didn't answer him. Because I didn't know. All I knew was that I had spent my entire life giving, loving, sacrificing. And now I was the houseguest who never left. But I wasn't going to let them write me out of my own story. Not yet. The last time Evan called me Mom, and really meant it was probably before Kelsey moved in. Since then it was just she when he talked to others and you when we argued. That morning, after I found out they had removed my name from the deed, I wandered through the house like a stranger in a museum of my own life. Every object had a memory attached, but even the memories were being rebranded. The picture frames on the hallway wall used to hold family photos. Evan's kindergarten graduation. Daniel standing beside our first car. Me and Evan covered in flour from baking gingerbread one Christmas. Now, all gone. Kelsey had replaced them with minimalist prints, abstract gray blobs in gold frames. Modern, she said. Clean. She erased us. I walked into the kitchen to find Evan and Kelsey sipping green juice, scrolling their phones. The way they looked up at me, disinterested, mildly irritated, you'd think I was the cleaning lady who spoke out of turn. I asked Evan again, calmly this time. Why didn't you tell me you took me off the deed? He didn't even flinch. Because we knew you'd make it a thing. And it didn't have to be. I trusted you. Mom, he said, exasperated. You've had your time with the house. It's ours now. And honestly, you're making this uncomfortable for everyone. Uncomfortable. That was the word they always used when I set a boundary. When I asked to be respected. When I dared to act like I mattered. Kelsey chimed in, always ready with a sugar-coated knife. You're welcome to stay for now. But we really do need to discuss a long-term plan. Evan and I want to start a family. We need space, privacy. You understand, right? I was stunned. Are you asking me to move out? She smiled politely. We're just being honest. We think that's fair. Fair. They used that word like a weapon. I stared at Evan. My son. The boy I once held against my chest after he broke his arm falling out of a tree. The boy who cried for me after his father died. The boy who used to kiss my cheek and say, "Love you, Mom," before running off to school. Where was he now? His eyes were cold. He looked down at his phone, not me. I turned and left the kitchen. Went upstairs to the guest room, that's what they started calling it. The guest room. Even though it was once my bedroom. The walls still had tiny pinholes where our wedding photo had hung. I sat on the bed and felt the air leave my lungs. Not from panic, from clarity. I realized they weren't slowly pushing me out. They already had. Later that week they held a dinner party. They didn't invite me. I wasn't even told. I only found out because I overheard them whispering about seating arrangements. I stayed upstairs out of the way. But then I heard something I couldn't ignore. One of Kelsey's friends, her voice loud from wine, asked, "So who's that lady I saw the other day? The older one in the hallway?" And Kelsey answered, laughing, "Oh, that's Evan's mom. She's kind of between places." Between places. Like I was homeless. Like I was some drifting old woman who just wandered into their suburban utopia and forgot to leave. I didn't cry. Not that night. Not until the next morning when I found the note. It was taped to my bedroom door. Cold. Precise. "Hi, we'd appreciate if you could avoid using the downstairs bathroom during dinner hours, as it makes guests uncomfortable. Also, please keep noise to a minimum after 9 p.m. We're trying to establish a calming environment for fertility." Noise. That's what I had become. Not a mother. Not a person. Just noise. I ripped the note in half. My hands were shaking. I went to find Evan. He was in the garage putting together a crib. They hadn't even told me they were trying, let alone expecting. Evan, I said, holding the torn paper. What is this? He stood, wiped his hands on a rag. We talked about this. Boundaries, Mom. No, I said louder than I expected. This is not about boundaries. This is about pushing me out. You took my house. You rewrote the rules. You erased me. He didn't deny it. Instead, he said, you don't own this anymore. Act accordingly. And just like that, he buried me. Right there in the garage. I turned and walked away. That was the last time I tried to be heard in that house. But I didn't leave. Not yet. Because somewhere inside me something ancient stirred. Something maternal and mighty. I had built that house with my own hands. Painted those walls. Cleaned vomit out of that carpet at 3 a.m. when Evan had the flu. They might have taken the paper deed. But they hadn't taken my history. They hadn't taken me. That afternoon I called a lawyer. A former student of mine, now working in elder rights. I told her everything. Title transfer. The deception. The emotional coercion. She didn't hesitate. We may have grounds for undue influence. If they manipulated you, especially under trust, there's a chance we can fight back. I asked her what my chances were. She paused, then said, if we can prove you weren't of full consent, we fight. And I wanted to fight. But not just for the house. For me. For the woman who raised a son alone. For the mother who gave everything and was discarded like yesterday's junk mail. For every older woman watching this who's been told she's a burden. Who's been pushed into silence. I wasn't ready to disappear. Not yet. Not ever. There's a unique kind of silence that fills a house when love leaves it. It's not peaceful. It's not quiet. It's haunting. Like the walls themselves know they've betrayed you. I sat alone in the backyard that I once planted rose bushes in. Years ago, Evan had helped me dig holes for the roots. His little hands covered in dirt, grinning with pride every time we patted down the soil. Those bushes were gone now, pulled out for a patio extension Kelsey insisted on. Too old-fashioned, she said. Everything I loved was suddenly too old-fashioned. The next few days passed in a strange daze. Evan and Kelsey became colder, more distant. They stopped pretending. There were no more casual hellos or dinner invites. No more asking how my day was. They treated me like an intruder, one who had overstayed her welcome. One afternoon, I overheard Kelsey talking to someone on the phone while she thought I was outside. Her voice was clear, sharp, and unapologetic. She doesn't own anything here. She's just visiting. We've already talked to a realtor. Once she's out, we're listing the place. I stood frozen in the hallway. Not even a shred of guilt in her voice. They were planning to sell the house, my house, and toss me out like an unwanted memory. I stepped back quietly, my heart pounding. But not from fear. From rage. I thought about my lawyer's words. If we can prove undue influence. I started gathering everything I could. Old emails. Texts from Evan when he begged me to sign the new deed papers, claiming it was for simplification. Photos of family events I hosted. Proof that I paid the mortgage alone after Daniel passed away. There were boxes of receipts in the attic. Water bills. Property taxes. All in my name. Even the old deed. The original one. Before they tricked me. I didn't know exactly what I was building, but I knew it was my truth. My voice. My right to be heard. And then, just as I was starting to feel steady again, something happened that shook me all over again. Evan invited guests over. I hadn't met them before. 2 couples. Friends of Kelsey's from her yoga circle. I stayed upstairs. I always did now. But the laughter got louder, and then I heard footsteps coming toward my door. Knock. Then a voice I didn't recognize. Hi, Evan said this was the guest room. My husband's feeling a little sick, and we just need a quiet place for a moment. I opened the door, stunned. Excuse me. She looked startled. Oh, I thought I didn't realize someone was staying here. I looked past her and saw Evan at the end of the hall, pretending not to see. Avoiding eye contact like a child caught red-handed. I turned to the woman and smiled tight. "This is not a guest room. This is my room. And I live here." She apologized quickly and walked away. Later that night I confronted Evan. "You told your guests this was a guest room." He shrugged. "It's not like it's your house." I felt the blood drain from my face. "This is my home. You lived here because I made it a home. I built this. Technically, your name isn't on the title anymore." There was again that icy legal detachment. Like I was a tenant he was itching to evict. That night, I stayed awake thinking about all the things I had ignored. The little humiliations. The whispered insults. The way Evan's love had been chipped away piece by piece until only convenience remained. The next morning, Kelsey left a printed list of household expectations on the kitchen counter. Rules like, no cooking after 6 p.m. Please ask before inviting anyone over. A limit laundry usage to weekends only. The final line sent a chill down my spine. We hope these adjustments will help everyone feel more comfortable in the transition period. Transition period. They wanted me gone. That wasn't speculation anymore. It was a plan. I packed a small suitcase and left the house that afternoon. I didn't tell them where I was going. I needed space. Time to breathe. I stayed with my friend Patricia, who lived across town. Her guest room was small, but it was warm. Inviting. I told her everything. And she did something Evan hadn't done in months. She listened. Really listened. And then she said something that stopped me cold. Just because someone's your child doesn't mean they're incapable of cruelty. Cruelty. That word hit me like a truck. I'd spent so long trying to understand. Trying to justify. Trying to make it make sense. But sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes people turn cold not because they're hurt but because they can. Because they know you won't fight back. I stayed with Patricia for a week. And in that week, I became a woman with a plan. I called my lawyer every day. We drafted a legal complaint for financial manipulation, emotional coercion, and potential elder abuse. I gave her everything: documents, proof, testimonies. And we filed. The day the papers were served, Evan called me. Not to apologize. Not to make amends. But to yell. "How could you do this? You're ruining our lives." I stayed quiet for a moment. Then I said, "No, Evan. I'm reclaiming mine." Blick. He hung up. But I wasn't shaken anymore. I was steady. Ready. I moved in with Patricia permanently while the case proceeded. And for the first time in months, I slept through the night. Not in my house, but in peace. I never thought I'd have to sue my own child. Even now, saying those words out loud makes my stomach twist. But sometimes, silence is what gives cruelty its power. And I had been silent long enough. The weeks after serving Evan the legal notice were full of tension. I didn't hear from him or Kelsey, but I saw their posts online: curated smiles, brunches, yoga retreats. Not a whisper about what they'd done. They wanted the world to see them as this glowing couple, generous, wholesome, spiritual. But behind closed doors, they had tried to erase the woman who raised him, the one who nursed him through fevers, who saved every macaroni drawing, who stayed up nights working just to afford his science camp. I remembered those nights like they were yesterday. Me sitting at the kitchen table, squinting at the numbers, figuring out how to stretch $1 just a little more. I gave up vacations, new clothes, even my own dental care so Evan could have braces, so he wouldn't be teased like I was. And now, he and his wife had turned me into a nuisance. Leftover. A guest. I poured my heart out in my statement. We weren't just suing for the deed, we were suing for dignity, for truth. My lawyer, Grace, was a calm, steely woman in her late 60s. She'd seen cases like this before, but even she admitted there was something particularly cruel about mine. "They manipulated you when you were grieving," she said. "You were vulnerable. It matters." She was right. It was only a few months after Daniel died, my husband of 28 years. The world had gone gray then, and Evan had shown up like a lifeline. Helping with groceries, calling every day, making me feel less alone. Then one day he sat me down and said, "Mom, you know we'll always take care of you, right? It would just make things simpler if the deed had one name on it. Don't worry, it's still your home." I believed him. Because love shouldn't require suspicion. Because your child shouldn't lie through their teeth and look you in the eye while doing it. But they did. Kelsey was clever, every move was wrapped in politeness. Smiles like glass. She never yelled, never pushed. She just twisted slowly like turning a doorknob until the whole thing clicks. In court, Evan and Kelsey showed up looking like a magazine cover. Matching navy suits, calm expressions. Kelsey even waved at someone in the back as if this was a networking event. When Evan was asked why they removed me from the deed, he said, "We thought it would be easier tax-wise." Mom said she didn't want the responsibility anymore. I wanted to scream. I never said that. I never would've. Then Kelsey took the stand and said, "We've always opened our home to her. But over time it became difficult. There were boundary issues. It just made sense to formalize the ownership." Boundary issues. I had to ask for permission to use my own stove. I was scolded for folding towels the wrong way. Then my lawyer pulled out the emails. Evan begging me to trust him. Photos of me shoveling the snow outside the house while they vacationed in Bali. Videos from holidays I hosted the same home they claimed was never mine. And then, a voice recording I had taken where Evan said, "You don't get to call the shots, Mom. You're lucky we let you stay here." That one made the judge pause. There was a beat of silence that felt like thunder. Evan looked down at the table. Kelsey went pale. We rested our case. And then came the hardest part, waiting. Days passed. And in that waiting, something strange happened. I started to feel free. I spent my days with Patricia cooking, laughing, talking about books we never had time to read when our kids were young. We took walks by the lake, drank coffee on the porch. I began to breathe in a way I hadn't in years. And I realized something. It wasn't just the house they took from me. It was my voice. And now I had taken it back. The court called a week later. We won. The judge ruled that the deed transfer had been done under emotional coercion. That Evan and Kelsey had demonstrated a clear pattern of manipulative behavior and undue influence. Not only was the deed reinstated under my name, but they were ordered to vacate the property within 30 days. I was awarded damages for emotional distress and partial repayment for expenses I had covered during their occupation. When the ruling came in, I cried. Not because I was happy, but because I finally felt seen. Evan sent me one message after that. It said, "I hope you're proud of yourself. You tore this family apart." I didn't reply. Because I hadn't torn anything apart. I just refused to be erased. The day I walked back into my house, it felt different. Yes, but also clean. No more whispered judgments. No more walking on eggshells. No more pretending not to hear them planning their next step behind closed doors. I stood in the kitchen and placed my hands on the counter. The same counter where I used to make Evan's school lunches peanut butter and jelly with the crusts cut off, just the way he liked. I thought about the little boy who once told me, "When I grow up, I'm going to buy you a castle." And I let the memory go. Because sometimes, the people we raise grow into strangers. And sometimes, healing means letting go of the version of them we miss. But I didn't feel bitter. Felt whole. It wasn't the ending I wanted. But it was the one I needed. It's strange how peace doesn't come with fanfare. No loud celebration. No parade. Just the sound of quiet, real, heavy quiet, and the realization that no one is coming to ask you to leave your own kitchen. The first night alone in the house was hard. I sat on the floor in the hallway for an hour, just listening. It felt haunted not by ghosts, but by memories. Evan's first steps. His teenage tantrums. Birthday candles blown out right there by the fireplace. But there was also something else in the air that night. A kind of stillness. Like the house itself was exhaling. Cleaned every corner. I opened windows and let the breeze sweep through. I donated everything Evan and Kelsey left behind: designer trinkets, cold-looking art pieces, wine they never let me touch. The home began to look like mine again. Or maybe for the first time. It wasn't long before the whispers started among the extended family. Cousins messaged me cautiously at first, some even apologetic. "I had no idea what they were doing to you. I thought you moved out by choice." One of Evan's aunts even cried on the phone. "He always seemed like such a sweet boy." So did I. People love the illusion of a perfect family. But perfection doesn't raise children. Sacrifice does. And silence, when abused, only turns into fuel for the ungrateful. I had spent most of my life being the reliable one. The caretaker. The woman who showed up, cooked the meals, remembered the birthdays, bit her tongue when insulted, and gave more than she ever asked for. But now, at 66, I realized something I wish I'd known earlier. Being kind doesn't mean being quiet. Being loving doesn't mean being used. Patricia and I started a little ritual. Every Friday night we have what we call freedom dinners. Just us two, sometimes a neighbor or an old friend. We light candles, play old records, and talk about anything: our regrets, our favorite shows, our plans for spring. And one night, over a glass of wine, she looked at me and said, "You know, you didn't just get your house back. You got yourself back." And I did. For years I had let other people decide who I was allowed to be. A mother, widow, helper, a guest. Now I was just Diane. I planted flowers in the front yard. I got a rescue dog, a little scruffy terrier named Max who follows me everywhere. I took an art class at the community center. I even started writing again, things I hadn't done since college. It's not about starting over. Not really. It's about continuing for me, not through someone else's needs. Evan hasn't contacted me since the lawsuit. I sometimes wonder if he regrets what he did. If he thinks about the sound of my laugh, the meals I made, the stories I used to tell him at bedtime. But I don't dwell. He made his choices. And so did I. The last photo I have of us together sits in a box now, not out of bitterness, but clarity. I'm not erasing him. I'm simply not allowing his betrayal to define me anymore. And as for Kelsey, I heard she tried to start a blog about intentional living. The irony made me laugh. I live with intention now. Not out of revenge, but out of rebirth. The town I live in isn't big, but it's warm. There's a bakery down the street where they know my name. The mailman always waves. The air smells like pine and fresh starts. I still have days where I feel the sting when the house is too quiet, or when I see a mother and son laughing together in the park. But those moments pass. And what replaces them isn't sadness, it's grace. I know I did my best. I gave everything I had. And when it was time to fight back, I did. With courage. With dignity. Without sinking to their level. Not because I stopped loving my son, but because I finally started loving myself. So if you're watching this, and you've ever been made to feel like a burden in your own story, I want you to hear me clearly. You are not a guest in your life. You are not disposable. And you are not too old to start again. I thought the end of my family meant the end of everything. But sometimes letting go of the people who hurt you is how you come home to yourself. Now, every morning I drink my coffee on the porch, Max lying at my feet. I watch the sunrise and I whisper a quiet thank you. Not for what I lost, but for what I finally found.